Tales from the Middle East. Impossible Tales from Syria. It came to the ears of the Caliph that there was in the city a storyteller of great talents, a man who could spin yarns endlessly without faltering. According to the rumors, this man could tell adventures from sunset to dawn, recite unheard of tales from sunrise till night, and never tell the same story twice. The Caliph sent his court attendants to find the storyteller, and when they brought the man before the Caliph, he said, "It is rumored that you are the greatest storyteller in the land. Why is it that I have never heard of you?" "I have no pretensions to greatness," the man replied. "I merely entertain my friends in the coffee-house with my favorite tales." "Oh, come, come," the Caliph said. "Let us not begin with false modesty. It is said that you can tell every kind of tale, and spin it out until your listeners cry for you to end it. When you have had something to eat, I will listen to one of your inventions." The court attendants fed the storyteller, and then they brought him again before the Caliph. "If I wanted a story to last until dawn, you could tell it," the Caliph said. "If I wanted a story that was all true, I am sure you would be able to tell it. But these are not true tests, since many other storytellers can do as well. What I want from you is merely a short tale, but everything you say must be false. If I detect one word of truth in it, I will make you my slave. Now you may begin." When the storyteller heard what was expected of him, he hesitated, for it is difficult to talk for any length of time without saying something true. But he had no choice, so he began. "O great Caliph," he said, "I am my father's elder brother. I was 8 years old when he was born. My grandmother put him in my arms and told me to keep him from crying. But nothing I did seemed to satisfy him until he told me to carry him to the bazaar. There he seemed happy because he could argue with the other man over the fine points of the Koran. Before we left the bazaar, he insisted on buying a fresh egg, but no sooner had he bought it than a large chicken picked its way out. As the chicken was very large, and as we were both tired, we rode the chicken home. But by the time we arrived, the chicken had grown as large as a camel, and I had to hand my father down to my grandfather, who, inasmuch as my father was my brother, was also my father." The Caliph grunted at the preposterous lie of the storyteller. "That chicken," the storyteller went on, "had a tremendous appetite. It ate so much that before long we were all on the verge of starvation, and we decided to put the chicken to work. Since the chicken belonged to my father, he drove it out every morning and piled firewood on its back, until we had a vast supply of wood in our yard. But the rubbing of the wood on the chicken's back made sores, and the chicken became sick. My grandfather became worried, and he consulted his grandmother about what to do. She advised him to make a poultice out of a walnut seed and put it on the chicken's back. This he did. The next morning when we awoke, the chicken was well again, but a walnut tree was growing out of her back. Within 3 days it had grown into an enormous tree which moved with the chicken wherever it went. Within a week a huge crop of walnuts was hanging in the branches. 12 men were required to pick all the nuts, and it took them from Saturday to Thursday. The branches were spread so far that a nut picker going from the sunny side of the tree to the shady side would find the sun had set before he arrived. The Caliph shook his head and snorted. "When the picking was done," the storyteller went on, "I went around the tree to see if all the nuts had been removed. It took me an entire day. Just as I was about to go home, I saw my father's chicken sitting in the branches, getting ready to roost for the night. I picked up a clod of earth and threw it at her. The clod went up in the tree, but it didn't come down. It spread and completely covered the top of the tree, and we were greatly elated to discover that we had 40 acres of new farmland up in the air. We put our cattle up there to graze, and when the next planting season came, we got the new ground ready for planting. My grandfather and I planted sesame seed, but after a month we saw that nothing was growing. My grandfather asked his neighbors' advice, and they told him he had been foolish to plant sesame, that melons were the only things that would grow on freshly turned sod. So he sent me and my younger brother, that is my father, up in the tree to pick all the sesame seed we had sown. That took us about an hour. There were about 8 bushels of sesame seed, but I noticed, when we went through, that one of the seeds was missing. We went back over the 40 acres, looking for the missing seed, and were just ready to give up when we saw a small ant dragging it to its hill. I seized the seed, but the ant wouldn't let it go. We had a furious tug-of-war, but neither of us could get it away from the other. In the heat of the struggle, the sesame seed broke in two. So much oil flowed from that single sesame seed that it made a river, and the people of our village were able to float their crops to the city in boats on the river of sesame oil. Again the Caliph snorted. Then, the storyteller went on, while my father, my grandfather, and I were planting the melon seed, a terrible storm came up. As there was no shelter of any kind on this 40 acres, we didn't know where to go. So my grandfather and I jumped into my father's hollow tooth. After taking one last look around him, my father took hold of a fat sheet and jumped in after us. The storm lasted 47 days, and we would have starved in that hollow tooth if it hadn't been for the sheep, which my father had brought along. At last, we peeked out and saw the sun was shining, but when we crawled out of the tooth, we found that the rain had washed away the entire 40 acres of ground, and we were trapped up in the air. Fortunately, my father had the foresight to bring a rope. We tied it securely and let it hang down to the earth. Then we slid down one at a time. Thus it happened that we were saved. And seeing that the storyteller had come to the end, the Caliph said, "This is a remarkable adventure you have related, storyteller. I have only one question to ask you. Is this tale true or false?" "Great Caliph," the storyteller said, "it is true from beginning to end." "If it is true," the Caliph replied, "then you have failed to do what I have asked, for I have ordered you to tell a tale without a word of truth in it." "Oh, great Caliph," the man said, smiling, "I have followed your instructions to the letter, for when I said the tale was true, I was simply telling another falsehood to round out the story." "So be it," the Caliph said, laughing. "The rumors I have heard about your talent are well founded." And he gave the storyteller a handful of gold pieces and sent him on his way.